You know that feeling when you order something from halfway across the world? You click a button, and a few days later, poof, it's at your door. It feels like magic, right? Totally seamless. But what you don't see is this incredible, complex web of code, data, and a whole lot of rules. And it turns out that simple online world of ours is way more complicated and way more divided than you might think.
Yeah. See, every time you stream a movie, buy an app, or just browse a website, your data is crossing borders. But these aren't the borders you can see on a map. They're regulatory borders. An app that works perfectly fine in New York can just hit a legal brick wall in Berlin. And it's these invisible lines that are shaping our entire digital economy.
So this gets us to the big question for this whole explainer. How is it possible that in our super connected world, one single click can be governed by three totally different philosophies? We're going to dig into the real core of the conflict between the world's major Western economic blocs.
All right, let's meet the main players in this great regulatory divide. You've got the United States, the European Union, and of course, the post-Brexit United Kingdom. Now, they're all digital giants, but their rule books are fundamentally different, and that's what creates these policy puzzles we're talking about.
Okay, at the heart of all this are two really deep competing visions. In the US, you've got that classic Silicon Valley mindset. Move fast and break things. It's a light touch approach that really prioritizes innovation above all else. But then you have the EU, which takes what's called a precautionary approach. This is shaped by their history, a huge focus on protecting fundamental human rights from powerful systems. So this isn't just about policy. It's a real clash of philosophies, speed versus safety. And make no mistake, the scale we're talking about here is just staggering. This isn't some niche corner of the economy. The digital sector makes up a quarter of the US GDP, and it's almost as big in the EU and the UK. We are talking about trillions of dollars, which is exactly why these different rulebooks have such a massive, high-stakes impact. And then there's the UK, kind of carving out its own path after Brexit. It's really trying to perform this delicate balancing act, a tightrope walk, if you will. They want to be as nimble and innovative as the US, but also keep the strong data protections that the EU values. It just perfectly shows the challenge, trying to be best friends with two rivals who have very, very different ideas about how to play the game.
Okay, I get it. All this policy stuff can feel a bit abstract. So let's make it real. Let's see how this actually plays out, not in some government building, but in an Iowa cornfield. We're going to look at the story of the agricultural tech giant John Deere. So John Deere developed this amazing piece of technology called See and Spray. It literally uses artificial intelligence to tell the difference between weeds and crops, and it only sprays the weeds. And the result? A mind-blowing 77% reduction in herbicide use. I mean, this is innovation at its absolute best. It saves farmers money, it boosts crop yields, and it's so much better for the environment. So you'd think a technology this good would be welcomed everywhere with open arms, wouldn't you? Well, not so fast. When John Deere tried to take this incredible tech global, it ran smack into that great regulatory divide we were just talking about. One brilliant product got tangled up in three totally different policy puzzles. And this is where it gets crazy. In the US, the problem wasn't even the AI. It was about the right to repair. Regulators were worried John Deere was creating a software monopoly. Then, in the EU, their AI Act classified the system as high risk, which meant a whole bunch of expensive audits. And meanwhile, over in the UK, new environmental laws demanded data sharing that directly clashed with the company's intellectual property. So the bottom line is, these aren't just little headaches. They have real, serious financial consequences. Just look at this breakdown. The regulatory costs in the EU are 4 times higher than in the US. Their projected export growth gets nearly cut in half. And if you're an investor, the policy uncertainty in Europe creates more than double the stock volatility. It's a perfect snapshot of how different rules create completely different business realities. Now, the John Deere story is just one example. So let's zoom back out and really look at the massive economic cost of all this digital fragmentation on a global scale. And this is where we get to the trillion-dollar question. So this maze of conflicting rules is what we're calling policy puzzles. They're the hurdles, the friction, the things that make our supposedly seamless digital world so incredibly complicated for businesses to actually navigate. And the cost of not solving them is, well, it's enormous. So what if we could solve these puzzles? I mean, what if the US, the EU, and the UK could actually find a way to align their approaches, to create rules for the digital world that work together? Well, the potential economic payoff is just staggering. $1 trillion. That's the estimated value that could be added to trade across the Atlantic by the end of this decade, if these regulatory gaps could be closed. This isn't just about making life easier for tech companies. This is about unlocking a massive wave of economic growth and innovation for everyone.
So, the big question is, where do we go from here? The challenge is huge, no doubt about it, but it's not impossible. Let's take a look at how businesses and policymakers are trying to decode our digital future and find a path forward.
For any business trying to navigate this world today, the name of the game is agility. It really means having a specific three-part strategy. First, you've got to assess the unique risks in each block. Second, you build alliances with local experts who actually speak the language of compliance. And third, you leverage new technologies, like blockchain, to create transparent data systems that can satisfy even the toughest regulators. It's not just about innovating your product anymore. It's about innovating around the rules themselves. At the end of the day, it all boils down to one fundamental trade-off. It's this constant, delicate balancing act between progress and protection. How do we encourage all the incredible innovation that digital tech brings while also making sure that our rights, our data, and our societies are kept safe? And you know what? There is no easy answer. And that leaves us with one final, really important question to chew on. In a world that's connected more and more by lines of code instead of roads or ships, who should get to write the rules? Should it be the innovators, the regulators, or do we need some new kind of global collaboration? The answer to that is going to define the next chapter of our digital world.